Hi guys, I'm Heidi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about the books that I read between Christmas and New Year. I finished 5 books and I DNF'd one, and that one DNF was The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I might come back to it, but I just wasn't a fan of the writing. I've studied Russian, so I had no issue with any of the Russian names or the occasional Russian words and phrases, but the writing seemed a bit clunky to me and the story failed to capture my interest. It didn't seem like a bad book as such, but I guess it just wasn't for me, which is a shame because the premise sounded like something I might actually really enjoy, but I am setting it aside for the moment. The first book that I finished was Dead Voices by Katherine Arden. So I didn't have a lot of success with The Bear and the Nightingale, but I think that Katherine Arden's middle grade series is fantastic. So Dead Voices is the sequel to Small Spaces, which is a creepy middle grade book set during autumn, and Dead Voices follows the same characters as Small Spaces. We follow a girl called Ollie and her 2 friends, and they all go on a skiing trip that goes slightly wrong. It was delightfully creepy, even more so than Small Spaces. What I love about these books is that any parents present have a normal, loving relationship with their kids. There is no trauma or abuse coming from that end, although Ollie has recently lost her mom, so she is still grieving, and the way that she is handling her grief is sort of portrayed realistically. Her friends Brian and Coco are also both great characters, and they have their own strengths and weaknesses, and I think they all form a good team. And I'm pretty sure that the character of Don Voland is a nod to Voland from Bulgakov's The Master and Margarita. As a kid, I would have loved this series, and I still very much enjoy a good children's book. So if you like middle grade books, then I would highly recommend this. I also finished reading Hollow Empire by Sam Hawke. This is the sequel to City of Lies, and as a sequel, it's very good. It was definitely just as good as the first book. It's difficult to explain the plot without giving too much away about the first book, but again, we follow 2 siblings who occupy important positions in a city-state. Jovan is a proofer. He knows all about poisons and their effects, and his job is to protect the Chancellor, who is also his best friend. The thing about Jovan is that he has OCD, which for him makes high anxiety situations more difficult to manage. And Jovan's sister Kalina is more of a diplomat. She is very skilled at communicating with all sorts of foreign diplomats and dignitaries, and she also has an invisible chronic illness. So she's not physically particularly strong, although she has shown some incredible strength in the past. And in the second book, there is a murderous plot going on. The culprit might be one of the foreign guests to the city because there's a massive carnival going on. It might be a mysterious assassin, or it might be someone very close to Kalina, Jovan, and the Chancellor. So they have to figure out what is going on and keep everyone alive. What I like about this series is that Jovan and Kalina are not your typical fantasy heroes. They're not good at sword fighting, they're not out for revenge, they don't desire power. They're simply doing everything they can to keep their friend, the Chancellor, alive and safe. And that is a duty that they've inherited, basically. And what I especially liked about Hollow Empire was the character development, and especially Kalina's chapters, which were a lot stronger in this book than in the previous one. The ending did feel a bit rushed, especially the last 50 pages or so. Things happened a bit too fast for my liking, and I'm not sure if I'm completely convinced of what was going on plot-wise. I still have a few questions here and there, but all in all, it didn't bother me too much. So that's really all I can say without spoiling anything. I would highly recommend this series to anyone who likes adult fantasy. I ended up enjoying it quite a lot. I also finished reading November by Gustave Flaubert. So this is Flaubert before he became Flaubert. He finished this book when he was 21, and there are some obvious flaws in this. He himself was a bit embarrassed about it in his later life, and it was never published during his lifetime, but it is clear that his extraordinary talent is already present in this book. It's a very short book, it's only around 100 pages or so, but it still manages to do quite a lot. This book is essentially about desiring love to such an extent that it completely consumes you. It's about searching for something and trying to find a purpose but never finding it. And we follow a young male character with his extremely volatile emotions. He goes from being drunk on love to being absolutely depressed, and he ends up meeting a slightly older prostitute who is also searching for love. The author also adds social commentary as well. He condemns any and all sexual relations that involve coercion, and he comments on what is expected of the men and women of his society. The women are often being forced to have sex against their will, often legally, he says, referring to marriage, and the men are often ridiculed for desiring love and for speaking about it. There is a lot of romanticism, and the language is almost too much, but the book is nonetheless very impressive. It fluctuates from being exactly the sort of thing you would expect from a 20-year-old to being very mature in an almost bleak or depressing way. There is clear talent here for creating atmosphere, for creating a certain frame of mind, and for creating everything out of nothing, which is pretty much what I always look for in an author. So all in all, this was a very enjoyable read. I then finally finished Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. So this was all about sleeping and dreams, and it was very informative but also very terrifying. It was a bit like Googling a few symptoms and then being convinced that you're going to die, because not getting enough sleep will kill you, or at the very least it will give you cancer or Alzheimer's or bad memory. You're more likely to be overweight, and if you're a baby or a small child, it will turn you into a socially incompetent adult. There was a lot of cool information as well, such as what the purpose of dreams actually is, and how sleeping can help us with problem solving and avoiding all sorts of really unpleasant health issues. But I don't think I can recommend reading this at night before bed, which is when I usually do most of my reading, because it can get quite terrifying. There were a few truly horrible stories about people who suffered from various sleep disorders. There was a guy who ended up killing his in-laws in his sleep while he was sleepwalking. And then there was a man suffering from fatal familial insomnia, which meant that he couldn't get any sleep at all anymore, and he ended up dying a very long and painful death. It's not particularly sciencey, and it's accessible to just about anyone, so if you're interested in this topic, I would recommend it, but you've been warned. And finally, I finished A Promised Land by Barack Obama. I listened to this on audio. It's a presidential memoir, so he is offering his view on everything that went on during his first 4 years in office. And because it is his account, he spends a lot of time exploring or justifying the decisions that he made, which is fine because that's what a presidential memoir is for. I've always thought of him as a thoughtful and compassionate person, and it really shines in the audiobook. He goes into a lot of detail when it came to specific policy decisions that he faced during his presidency. But I also liked how he sometimes used humor when impersonating a colorful character, or when he was talking about Michelle and his kids. So we don't just get stuff about his work, we get glimpses into lighter topics as well. He put a lot of emotion into this. You really feel his frustration when something goes wrong. He'll tell you as well, he'll be like, I was so pissed off, that was bullshit. But you also really feel his satisfaction when things go right. It was eloquent and intelligent. It was everything I expected from him, and listening to his voice was strangely calming and comforting. Thanks, Obama, but I mean it with sincerity. So that's it. Thank you all for subscribing to my channel and for liking my videos. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!